Hello, welcome to another Random Code stream. My name is Jason Bach, if you didn't know that. And in this stream, I'm going to start working on, I don't think I'll finish this, but I'm going to start working on this feature in Rocks. And it's a very small one, but basically it's adding an overload to the expectations that are created in Rocks and, hey, Electron, that are created in Rocks and add just another convenience overload to it. So before I do that, though, I'm going to just do a couple things real quick. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to pour some coffee because I always need my coffee in the morning. That is a requirement. So there we got. All right. And of course, after you pour the coffee, you got to drink the coffee. All right. And then I usually play my music, but I need to get something off my chest. And I know that I don't have thousands of people watching this right now, but this is for my own benefit, my own desire to do this. I did not know what was going on yesterday when I was streaming, and I was just doing my coding stream, enjoying it. I get off the stream and I start looking at news and I find out what's going on. And yesterday was a very rough day. And I don't even know any of these people that were involved. I live in the Twin Cities. And the city that I live in, ICE is all over the place. It's extremely enraging and difficult to see what is going on. Out of all that I saw yesterday, I think a couple things really hit. One is going to be odd, and I'm going to show it in just a second, but I think it's relevant. The one that really hit was seeing the video of Preeti, and I hope I'm saying his name right, saying words over the body of a veteran that had passed away. And then also seeing the statement that his parents made. He's already being vilified by our government, and his parents are trying to get people to understand he's not a bad person. He didn't do anything wrong. And I believe that, and if you don't, well, you're wrong. But as a parent, if something like this happened to my kids and they were immediately put up as the villain, as the bad person, it would be so devastating. It's devastating enough to lose your kid, especially like that. I have words for how I feel about all of this. And you can imagine what they are, but this isn't even remotely sustainable. And it's, if anything, it is just going to keep bringing a spark to other people to stand up against this. This has nothing to do with finding illegal immigrants that have felony crimes attached to their name. This has nothing to do with that. The sheer fact that it was found yesterday that Pam Bondi said to folks in government in Minnesota that this all basically stops if you give us the voter registration rolls in Minnesota, among other things, and then we'll pull ICE. It's extortion. This has to stop. And people cannot be silent about this. And that leads to the second thing, which is going to be weird. But as I was watching people post stuff and finding out what happened, I started to see people post things like this. And it was just, it's wild to see this, where people are this is the post that I saw, but it was in response to other ones that basically saying, this is just a golf account, but it's political because you can't golf if you're murdered by masked agents of the state. And this is mainly equestrian account, but it's also political because you can't go for a ride if ride your horse if ICE shoots you in the face. You can't be neutral on this, and you can't ignore this. And this is just incredibly true. You can't have these abilities like I do right now to stream and for people to work and meet their friends or go to a bar where you don't know if something is going to happen literally across the street. What happens if one of those morons, sorry, that's a bad word, idiots, shot so wildly that they hit somebody else that was in a building nearby? You can't be neutral on this stuff. You just can't. I saw a post yesterday for a local Mexican restaurant that I have gone to a fair amount in my life. I really haven't anymore because I found better options. And I'm going to shout out Bravi's Mexican restaurant. They are awesome. If you are ever in my town, please check them out. They make amazingly good food, and I love the place. So this place is called Pablo's. And they put a post out yesterday that basically said, "We are remaining neutral. Please stop by." No, I'm not stopping by anymore. I'm not going in there anymore. Haven't been there in a while, and I am not going to be there again. You can't be neutral because you don't want to piss people off because you want your business to stay up. You can't. You're going to have to state how you handle all this. This is not the time to be quiet. Sorry, my wife just texted me something. All right, so this is not a political stream, and I am going to get to coding, but this is also something that just can't be ignored. And I haven't been ignoring it, not in the slightest, but if anything, this is motivating me even more to do what I can to get this out of my state, out of my city. Because it's wrong. All right. Back to coding. Thank you I know there's only one person watching right now, and if anybody watches the VOD later on, but it is my channel, and yeah, that's why I didn't stream yesterday either. I just had after I streamed yesterday morning, I had no mental ability to play a video game, not even close. So anyway, let's do some coding for now. And let's hope that I don't end the stream and find out somebody else was murdered. So, do you know about BitChat? Nope, I don't know anything about BitChat. So, what this feature really is, and it's a little bit hard to see with this code, but basically when you're using rocks and you are mocking a type, and that type has a params parameter, what rocks does is, if I go down here, is you'll see that, excuse me, you'll see that I make an implementation uses rock argument of a string array to pass in. But I think I can show this here. If not here, I can show this on another. Not that one. It's not params here. Oh, can I was doing a search for this. It's not that one. No, I think I gotta find if no, not optional. Sorry, give me a second. I gotta find. I found another example yesterday. Let's cut all that out because I was using that yesterday to store some data. Where did I do this? Was it in this one? Optional? No, I don't want to take off whole word only. So BitChat is my co-founder and BitChat. You should have people and you can track what two people talking because you use it. Oh, okay. I had this example down. Wait, let me find default. The example I'm trying to find is one that has a default parameter, an optional parameter, and then a params parameter, and I can't find it because that will illustrate what I'm showing. If that happens, what you'll see is a second method here, overloaded for do, that just has the arguments here. And we're not doing that for this case for whatever reason. And we should. Because then we could have, effectively, what I want to have here is something like this, where it is the literal signature that you have. And then what this does is it effectively turns around and calls this .do. And I forget, it's like argument arg is or something like that. I forget. And then the args parameter or something like that. And so it's just a convenience method so that you can call it exactly the way that you would, except with using the rocks arguments. So, Jason, did you read what happened some days ago with me? Yeah, I think I saw that on the server. All right, so that's what I want to do today is just add in that extra overload and make it so that if there is a params argument that we're getting that. So, and I know I'm doing it for optionals, and I do it for params if there's an optional there. If there's just an optional, I'm sorry, if there's just a params, what did I just say? If there's an optional with the params, and create the overload, you're saying params of that type. But if I just have a params, it won't do it for whatever reason. And that's what we want to try to do here. So I have to remember now how all my code works. Jeez, my throat is just... All right, see you, Electron. Method expectations, method builder, because these are the expectations that we are building. So needs generator at defaults. Right. So we first generate it thinking we don't need defaults, but then we have to do something where we say only set this flag if we're currently not generating with defaults. So we look at all the parameters and we say if it's a pointer, then we do this. Oh, we're only setting this flag if we're currently not generating with defaults. Because we're doing a string join and we're doing it on every parameter and we're doing a capture here. Okay. It took me a second. Again, Rocks is a pretty complicated piece of code, and I have to sometimes remind myself as I go back through it what exactly is going on. I think when we do this, it's not so much generated with defaults, but what we need to do is generate with let me put this in here. Is generated with defaults really means, do we need to generate an overload for the given method because it has either an optional parameter and or it has optional and or parameters. So here we want to say we do this if the current parameter, and I should rename this parameter. I got into the habit years and years ago of using the underscore as kind of like an opaque. I don't care about the name of the parameter that's coming in to a lambda, but a lot of times I found out that actually having a parameter name helps because it does have some significance. So here what we want to do is say or parameter is params. And I think that would actually take care of all this. Now this is the method expectation builder. Do we have an indexer expectation builder? We have an indexer expectation indexer builder. We should have, I bet, if I've duplicated this, I bet I've done this. Yeah, indexer and method. Okay, so we need to do the same thing here. And I want to put this comment here as well. And then we need to say here, or is params. And then let's change this to parameter. Okay. And I know what this is trying to say. Although I don't like the way it changed that. So we're saying if it's generating defaults, then return if the parameter has an explicit default value. That's what we want to put as the explicit default value. Otherwise, is it params? Then we do this. Otherwise, we just use the type name and the parameter name. Simple. Okay. I like that. And then I'm going to change, because I noticed it had the squiggle thing here too. And so let's do that. And then for a ternary, I like having the... Did I do that here? Yeah, I did. And then you put the question mark and the colon there. I think that just reads easier. Ternaries can sometimes be a little bit hard to read in the first place, so... All right, let's run our analysis tests and see what we broke, if anything. I know I'm going to break a couple things. Like this test is now going to break because what's going to happen is the expectation is we should see for both of these 2 extra expectation setup methods being generated now. So I shouldn't see a lot of tests break, but I should see a handful of them breaking. Yeah, exactly. So we got 5 failing. And I bet params generator tests is going to be one of them. Yep. So this one is refstruct async. Is that what this is called? Yep. So if we look at what we're getting now, see there? See that? There you go. And there you go. And that should be the only thing that changed. Okay, let's do the song and dance. I'm going to have to do this for all 5 of them. Just because it's easier to delete the code, regen it, and we're going to get the test log. Yeah, let's do that. And just copy this code verbatim. Okay. And then paste that in, and then we're going to get rid of the big plus diff thing here. Wait, why did you not? I said, no, don't use regular expressions, my God. There we go. And then that one. Now this should pass, right? We shouldn't have a ooh, wait. Might? Or did it not? Oh, wait, I don't think it changed the code correctly. Darn it. Hold on. Try this again. Okay. Oh, and then we want to... Hopefully, yeah, because it looked like some of the code had gotten screwed up. Hopefully now this is okay. Still not right. What the heck? Oh, we do get actual compilation here. Well, that'll be fun. Huh. Okay. I love this is a clear error message. The type read-only span string may not be a ref struct or a type parameter, allowing ref structs in order to use it as a parameter t in the generic type or method arg is t. Oh yeah, okay. That is a case that I didn't think of. So I think if I look at this, I'll see it right away. This is fine. This is okay. We can do this. We cannot do this. Okay. What this needs to be is because in C# you can now use different types for params. You're not stuck with an array, and so you can now use spans or read-only of spans, among other collection types. It would be fine if this wasn't a ref struct, but it is. So what we need to do here is we need to pass in an instance of ref struct argument. We can't use rocks arg is. So if we look here, ref struct argument doesn't have a helper method to change things here, if that makes sense. And so to do this, we have a ref struct argument here. And we say throw if no. And then we capture it in handler 4. I think what I need to do is basically change this into a new, and I don't think I can just say new here. I've got to be really clear as to saying new global, because we can't pass in the predicate here. And we can't pass in the value either. We can't capture that because it's a ref struct. And so the only thing we can do is if we go down here, I think if we look at how that's implemented, is we're just passing in the args that we're getting here. That's the only validation you can really do. In the case of what we're trying to set up here, we can't pass. Well, we could pass in a predicate, but that's not what we're actually passing in with it. If you wanted to do a predicate, what you would do is coming up here, you would call this version and then say, how do I want to validate this? And pass in to this a new ref struct argument, passing in a predicate to say how I want to validate the read-only span. The only thing we can do here is a new. Okay. So, get rid of this. Let's get rid of this. Keep the focus on the thing that I need to do here. Okay, so if it's a params, type name is going to be needed. But what we're going to have to do here is say parameter is ref. Crap. Type is ref struct. Ref like type. And if I remember right, a ref like type. How do we know something is a ref struct? And I think if we look at our models here, yeah, let's control F12. There it is. That's what we're looking for. Is ref like. Is type ref like. Meaning span is a commonly used ref like type. So I think that's what we want to use. I really got to hit the bathroom for a second. So I will be back in just a couple of minutes. Don't go anywhere. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't done that already. Just got to hit the bathroom for a couple minutes. I will be right back, and I will continue working on this. Don't go anywhere. Okay, I'm back. So I think here what we need to do is say If it's a ref-like type, then what we need to do this is going to be, we need to do something else. We need to do this. Else we need to do, if it's not the params type. Okay, so now I just need to figure out what do we want to say if it's a params type and it's ref-like. Actually, no, this is the wrong spot. I'm sorry. This is not where I want to do this. This is just making the signature the method, and that's okay. As we saw here, that's exactly what we want. That's what's being put there. It's the implementation of this that we need to fix. This gets very complicated. I have as a desire someday to just go back through all of this and try to restructure things so it's not as complicated, but it just is. It is what it is, you know what I mean? So, if we generated with defaults, aha, ha ha ha, here we go. Or it's params, then what we do, so let's do this, else it's that. Because in either case, it's params, right? The thing we need to do now here is say, if the parameter is ref-like, parameter type is ref-like, then what we need to do is something else. What we're going to do is that. Okay. And so here what we want to do is, instead of turning around and doing what we're currently doing, we want to say here, new global rocks left struct argument type, and it's going to be some type, and then that. Except now we need the type of the parameter, right? No, not there. Here. So here we need the parameter type fully qualified name. And I don't think we do the not generics. We do want to say the generics. Now, we have to remember to do this for the indexer as well. But what does this do to this? It passes. We got the code right. Yippee! It's the little victories in life that matter. All right. So we got that correct. Okay. So now all we need to do is in the indexer as well. Oh, that's right. And an indexer also has the setter, so we have to do this joyous piece of code is generated by defaults. And then Oh wait, let's change this to being parameter, and then we can change this to being that, and then we need this to be or parameter is params. Okay. So here is, let me split the screen. Here's the thing that we need to scroll back up to when we made a change. We just made this. How did I do it? Yeah, I just made it here, didn't I? This is right. Oh wait, I'm looking in the wrong spot. I'm looking for parameter values. Parameter values here. Okay. Yeah. So we need to stick this in here. And we should change P to parameter. Because if it's a rough like type, we'll do that. Otherwise, we do that. Okay. So let's actually... This is in the build getter. Now let's look at the build setter. We got to have something very similar. Yes, we do. Except it's... Yeah. It's a little hidden because of this whole value type thing we need to skip. So what we need to do here is this is what we're grabbing for that. Okay, so let's change this to parameter. Right, and then we do no, stop. What did you just do? It's like, don't be so helpful, because you actually broke my train of thought there. So we want to take all that and put it here as well. And yes, you're like, why don't you share code? That's exactly what I would be thinking too, because this does need a lot more code sharing, and there's too much that's like this where it's copied and pasted around. I know that. I absolutely know that. It's one of those things that I just need to sit down and go, what can I change? What can I move around? What can I do? All right. So we have what I think is correct for params generator test. Now, when I'm looking at this test, I'm also thinking what I want to have is like when params in method is rough struct, when params in method is array. or not ref struct, because we would handle it just the way it is. Generate when params is in indexer is ref struct, or ref like, whatever. I kind of would like to break this up a little bit more and have a little bit more fine-grained control on. So let's say public static async task. Generate when params in method is ref struct async. A method is not ref struct async. Generate when params in indexer, and then in indexer. And then this method's going to go away. This. So let's do the first one. We can do the first two because we can just kind of slightly tweak them for what we need. So is it a ref struct? Yes. So we're going to yoink that one. And then all the do's here go away. Actually, you know what? Let's not. I've bit myself way too much in the past trying to change the code, and it's like it's never perfect in terms of what it should be. Okay, and then let's do this, except in this case, we're going to say do, and it's params string args. Okay. Now we want where it's in an indexer. We can just say here's it doesn't matter if it's in a class or an interface. The implementation would be the same either way. It's just it's a little tougher to do this if it's I params indexer. So now we'll just say it's a string. I can't type this. Get set. And I believe that is a valid definition of an interface. Use integral or string argument for indexers. Huh? Type containing an index uses an index other than that. By default, this rule only looks at their terms to configure. Indexers should use integer or string types for the indexer. So this is just a thing that we can ignore, because people will. This is just saying you really shouldn't do this, but that's irrelevant to what we're trying to do here, because people will do that. To guarantee people will do things. I've seen things. Let's just call this do as well. And I'm actually going to say interface I params method and just say it's a void do. And the same thing here, because interface I params method void do. There. Cool, and then we should be able to do the one with the indexer. Except this one, we want it to be a read-only span of string. There. All right, so now let's generate the code and see what runs and what doesn't. And arguably we can get rid of this test because we've split that up now into these tests that we want. All right. This will take a little bit because I got to get the code generated for one and the code generated. The nice thing also about using interfaces for these tests is that they generate less code typically. So I can usually grab it in this. Oh. Oh, crap. The name of the... Hold on. Yeah. Forgot that the file names are changed. That's fine. That's fine. Now we'll do it here as well. And here as well. Okay. Okay. Now hopefully we should see some code. Huh? Oh, can't win. Please run. Please clap. There we go. Okay, so now we're getting some code. Okay. Just stick that here. And then run it again, and we should get the make error. So we can grab that code for the make. And the make doesn't change because that just generates the type as is, so that doesn't change. This is purely just for the create side. Now, does this compile? And it does. Okay. So now we got to do the same thing for the other three to make sure that we have everything correct. Oh, really? It didn't. No, I grabbed it. Okay, okay. Fine, fine. Okay. And this is not a shot at LLMs or these tools, but I really cannot see a tool just like I couldn't have given it the spec to say, do this for me. Maybe I could have. Maybe that would have been an interesting experiment to see if it would have got it all right and done all the tests and updated things and stuff, but you know, I also know that Rocks is some fairly tricky surgery at times if you want to change things. And again, part of the reason I do all these projects myself is it's my personal workout. You know, I don't go to, or I don't work out at my house. I don't go to a gym anymore. I have all my stuff at home. So I do all my workouts at home. And I personally don't find that hard. Like some people I know say, I can't work out at home. I've got to like go to a gym because that gets my mindset to like, I'm going to work out. And I get that. Totally fine. If that's what floats your boat, awesome. I have a whole bunch of stuff here at home and I use that in my workouts and I don't skip. It is what it is. Anyway, when I work out, I don't use a forklift to lift the weights for me. You know, or if I want to do an elliptical, I don't have a motor just turning for me and I'm just standing there, you know. yeah, you have to exercise those muscles. And I do believe that with stuff like this, you still need to exercise your brain and figure some stuff out for yourself. And so it's like if I was doing a puzzle solving not championship, but a challenge, or doing something like Random.Code, it would be ridiculously stupid to just say to Copilot or whatever, or to Claude, figure this Random.Code problem out for me. You're not learning anything by doing that. Maybe you are, in the sense of, well, I want to see what the answer is, but you really didn't exercise your brain to learn what is the thing that I'm trying to learn to solve from this problem. You know, if you're at work and you want to do something where it can remove some repetitive tasks from you, or, you know, maybe do, like, sometimes I find we have Copilot running on all our PRs, and I'd say at least half the time what it recommends is meh. You know, but sometimes I find some things that if we have, like, in a markdown file, like misspellings and comments, or in the markdown file, or sometimes you'll find something in code that it might go, But then again, like I've said many times, we have so much that we use, like code analysis, we run all that before we ever do make a PR. So it's like, it's not a big deal. We don't usually find stuff, but I'll take, if something shows me, hey, there's a problem, I'll definitely take it. Now, I've been babbling this whole time, and I think all the tests have passed. And what's interesting to note here is if I come up to the setup expectations with the indexer, and again, we have to use this weird indexer 0, because if you have multiple indexers on a type, they're all going to start with this. And so we can't really... Oh. No, we can't. We have to separate them out because of the expectations here. We return them here. So what you see is actually this. Okay. And then params turns around to that. And then this turns around to be, never mind, I was not thinking correctly. This should turn around to a ref structure army. Perfect. Okay. So now all these tests should pass. All right. So I'm going to do a commit here. This is for what issue? 268. Got the gen code change working on tests now. Okay, so if we come back here and we say, I was actually watching a video yesterday on using Git in Visual Studio, which I use a fair amount, and also that you can basically manage a PR directly in Visual Studio. I did not know that you can do that. So if you make a PR, you can say, like, view it in the browser. You can also view it directly in Visual Studio. You can actually manage if people are making code changes. You can see them directly in Visual Studio. I'm like, I'm going to force myself to try that next time, because I think that's pretty interesting. I think that's because then you don't have to, like they said, you don't have to switch to a browser to look at the PR and see things out of context. You can see it directly into your code if you're on that branch that the PR is based on. I'm like, that is actually kind of ingenious. I'm gonna actually try it and get a real opinion about, does it actually seem to work good or not. But I was intrigued. You have my attention, as they say. Okay, so this one is probably just now. Which one is failing? This one. It's failing because... Oh, because of this one. This one now has an extra one being generated. And I bet also it's failing because... Well, maybe not. Okay, I'm going to have to look at this in a little bit more detail and see what it's doing. Okay. I have no idea if it's going to be able to catch all the codes. We'll just go right to the test log. Grab all that. Okay, let's see first if it compiles. It does. Now I want to look at what it's actually doing. So we have object parameters, but that's an array, so just as a rocks arc is. Okay, that makes sense. And this is a string and does it. Okay. Yeah, it's doing the right, I think it's doing the right thing, so I'm good with that. Okay. All right. This one is because of params. Okay, so we're going to have to rerun that. Let's get the, come on. Get all the gen code. And now that should be correct. Equals get hash code trace event, and then we have a trace event now. That has that. Oh, we pass that in. Okay. There's a guy, Mitch. I think he lives in Australia. He was helping out for a while. And I think he wanted to actually handle this, but haven't heard from him in a while. Hope he's doing okay. But he's definitely been making some contributions to this code, and it's been very helpful. I got some contributions from someone else for the CSLA custom serialization implementation I did. That's a source generator, and I got somebody to do some fixes in the code. Well, I didn't get them to do it. They just did it, and they fixed a couple of things that I really had not tested out thoroughly enough. And it's nice when you get those things. You see that people, for whatever reason, want to, be a part of something to help out, All right. By the way, if you're new to the channel and you haven't subscribed, please do so. I would really appreciate it. And if you have subscribed, I appreciate you for doing that. All right, this should be the last one in the unit test suite. Okay. I really hope this does not break the integration test. We're going to find out in just a second. All right. All right. So we should see now if I build everything, hopefully it doesn't break anything. Because we have integration tests that actually uses a source generator live. This is just looking at the code that it generates. So let's see if it builds everything first. Oh, crap. Well... I was worried about this. Not that warning stuff, this one. The call is ambiguous between the following method or properties. Yeah, okay. Well, this actually isn't that bad. This is saying, I don't know which one you're calling. Like if I go to params foo here, there's two of them, and it doesn't know which one you're trying to call. Are you trying to call the ref struct argument, or are you trying to call the one here that's making a new array? Right? I think that's what it's saying here. Right. And so if you look at foo here, this is okay, this is a params. Right. Okay, now I get it, because it is a read-only span and that has a new. So it's like, are you saying a new read-only span, or are you saying I think what we want to do is here is say new read-only span of a string. Oh no, we're trying. Okay, I just realized it's new ref struct argument of a read-only span of string. There we go. Okay. It may have been a little bit confusing, but what I'm doing here is I'm trying to say, I want to make sure that this is actually a ref struct. Down here, it's actually picking the one that is the params. I could actually, so this is something I knew I was going to kick into. I knew I had a test, this param test, so I have to be probably a little bit more explicit as to what I'm actually passing in where. Okay, but now if I build everything, it succeeds. If I run all the tests, big check here. Nice. Nice. Commit. 268. All tests pass now. Yippee. Okay, that's good. The make again is fine because that just will literally be that, and we can do this. I think what we want to say here is create members with read-only span, params argument specified. So it's interesting because actually using this, let's just say create X. If I actually want to pass this in as being B and C, that should work, right? Will it? It does. So these two are exactly the same, except this one is using the overload that uses the params read-only a span. And what does that do? That goes and turns around and just says read-only a span. Okay. I think, though, if I would have put in C here, it still passes. Because with the ref struct, you can't... Yeah. This is going to be something I'm going to have to think about for a second. Because with a ref struct, we can't pass that into the argument itself. Like with a params, we can. And we can pass in that array as what it is and then say, does it equal that? I think. The problem is with a read-only span, we can't pass in the read-only span to the ref struct argument. The only thing we can do is a validation here, right? So if I put B back here, but in this test, if I said the first one should be a C, now this should fail. Yes, and it fails correctly, as I would expect. And it's just saying, oh, I couldn't find... Yeah, B is not formatable. We don't have a way to format that. Fine. But... what do we do, though, for the one that we're trying to write as the override? I have to think. Think. Does it make sense in the case where you have because here's the thing with this ref struct argument type, we really cannot do this. You have to provide an evaluation for this. Because again, we cannot capture the state of a value here. It won't allow us to do that. And it just becomes a big problem. So it does, however, lead to what would arguably be very incorrect testing, which is if I did this and I called this, it's going to say, yep, that's fine. Well, but that's not right. As an author, I'd be like, well, I'm expecting that I'm getting B and C. Why are you letting this go through? I should force you to do this. I should always force you to do this. In other words, I'm almost thinking this is the only thing you can do. But this now would change what I'm doing for my implementation, because I am now, with all the work I've been doing in this branch, I have allowed you to pass in a read-only span, and then I just say, well, it's always going to be true, no matter what you pass in here. And so we've run into a very fun case. We're never going to have multiple params. You can only have one parameter in a method. So it's either going to be it'll either be a ref-like type or it won't be if a params exists. The problem is with an optional. Can you do an optional type? If I say public interface, doesn't matter. I know it's a bad name. If I said void foo and I said See, now I need a rough struct type that isn't a span. But I just want some rough struct type. So let's make one. Public ref struct my ref struct my ref struct my is equal to I don't know. Public my ref struct int a. Equals a new 3. Can you do that? I don't think you can. Yeah, because it can't assign that. Sorry. Oh, we could just look at that. Yes, we have a public static. To my ref struct int value. Provide a shut up. Okay. But there is. There is now. See? Right here. Huge, easy, implicit operator conversion here. Come on. Value typing can use a default parameter because there are no standard conversions to type. Yes, there are. Right there. There is a implicit conversion, right? Do my eyes deceive me? This is, I use this all the time in rocks. This then goes around and that calls this. So if I do that here, that's going to call here. Why are you saying that there isn't an implicit conversion? It does recognize that it's an implicit operator. I guess what my point was trying to say is that we don't have a way to pass in a value for the myref struct type. And hold on to it is, I guess, what I'm saying here. This is getting a little nebulous, but because I'm looking at this, could I make a ref struct an optional argument? C# ref struct optional parameter. Come on, Copilot search. Yeah, it gets... So you can't do it. Ref struct types cannot be used as optional parameters directly. This is because times const ref struct types cannot be boxed or stored on the heap. Yep, and the compiler enforces strict rules up to keep the stack only. Optional parameters are compiled into metadata with default value, which is incompatible with ref struct restrictions. Use a method overloading instead. So if you have a ref struct like this with a value, so they're just saying then this is your optional, which is it just doesn't take the ref struct. But that's not a case we would care about. We would just handle this accordingly. I think what I'm saying is okay, so we handle that case. We just simply can't do that. And that makes sense. Okay. The reason I'm getting to that point is because if you have an optional argument that is a ref struct, you can't do it. So it would only be a non-ref struct type. But I think if you have a params that is ref-like, there is no point in allowing them to do this. The only thing that we want to expose is a ref struct argument. And furthermore, a ref struct argument should not allow you to even make it with no arguments. The only way to use a ref struct argument is with a predicate. That's the only thing that makes sense. Because again, we can't pass in a value to this because of the ref struct limitations. If that makes sense. So if we have an optional argument, then when we generate that second method, if there is a params ref-like type, we would still generate it as the ref struct argument. But if there is not an optional argument and the only params that's there is a ref struct type for the params, we don't do anything. What happens if we had a params of ref struct types in an array? These are the things that keep me up at night. Actually, they don't, but ref struct my ref struct my, and then I say public interface I thing, and then I have a void foo, except it's going to be a params of my ref struct values. Yeah, it won't let you do that anyway. So that's fine. I was kind of hoping that was the case, and turns out that would be true. So only if the type itself is a ref struct would we handle it. So the case that we have to, so there's two things. I got to write this down. I think we need to do a couple of things. One, change ref struct argument to not have a no argument constructor available to call. And then during expectations generation for a method and indexers, if the method has an optional, well, how do I want to phrase this? We only want to generate let me rephrase this. we're going to do that second trip if we do have a params. Unless we only, if, unless do, but however, if the params is not a ref, is not ref-like, then we do another generation pass. Because if it's, we'll do another pass if, I believe the way that that is implemented, if I go back and look at that code, I can get rid of all this. And if we go back to what I just wrote, and look at the builders here, and look at the, not that one, is this would say only if, only set this flag for currently not generating with defaults. So we're going to set this if the current parameter has an explicit default value. That means it's optional, has a explicit default value, so we need to generate it. Or it's a params that is not ref-like. So that will set this first flag. So what I want to do here is I want to say in other words, change this to this. So we generate, or params is params, and parameter and not parameter type is ref-like type. There. Because if we had one that is ref-like and how am I trying to say this? So if you just had parameters that are required ones and then you have a params ref read-only span at the end for the params, it would not generate the second one. But if you do, it does. And then if a second pass is needed, then that means that we hit the case where there was a parameter that had an optional. So what we have to do then for this one then, if the params argument is ref-like, we still generate with ref struct argument as the parameter type and simply pass that over to the overload. That makes sense to me. May not make sense to you, but it makes sense to me in my head what's going on. This is the big one, because I need to look at and say here, is there ever a case where we're using ref struct? That's the one we just added. That's the one we just added. That's the one we just added. And this just gets you the projected name. It does not say you're calling the constructor. Ooh, that looks awful as hell. Formatting on that code was just terrible. So, ugh. All right. So it's only on these three that we just added that we actually call the default constructor. So it's just the three cases that I just made. So if can I even do this? Let's just comment this out. That should allow us to do this, right? We cannot call the integration tests now because those are incorrect. It's expecting that there is a no argument constructor for these types, but we don't need to do this. And then we could change this here. All right, so I think there's hope in getting to where we want to get. Whoops, that's not what I wanted. But this has gone on for about an hour and a half, and I've kind of reached my limit for a stream for coding. So let me go here, and I'm going to save these as notes because these are actually becoming valuable notes. Let's see, repos, rocks, docs, notes. There. I like doing that. I like having my notes in the repository. Just it's for historical purposes, if nothing else, because then it kind of shows what where my mind was going. But I think for the next stream that I'm going to do, and I don't know when I'm going to do this, is to do this work, is to change rough struct so that it doesn't have that no argument constructor. It really shouldn't. And force you to use the one that passes in a predicate so that you can verify it. And then I think that's going to clean up a whole heck of a lot of things. I hope. I noticed that rough struct was being used to generate a type back. Let me just check that quick. So if I come back here and I say this. Now projecting builders build argument is probably used in a ton of places. Well, it's used to say this is what I expect as the argument type. And then you have to provide it. And if it would force you to make that predicate, that's exactly what we want. So I think in the next stream, what I'm going to do is clean this up, get rid of the no argument constructor, change this so that it only requires a second pass in the case of parameters if the type is not ref-like. Okay. But sometimes it's still going to be there because you might have something that is an optional argument. And if that's the case, and the params type exists, and it's a ref-like, then we generate with the rough struct argument as taking a predicate parameter. Okay. Actually, no, I'm sorry. We still generate with the rough struct and we pass that over. It's up to you as the caller that you're going to call the constructor with the predicate, and then that will work. Okay. Otherwise, we could just say params string array, and then pass that into an rocks arg is that param array or that array, and then that should be useful, hopefully. But that's going to be the next time. So I want to thank everybody who stopped by and watching me stream. If you haven't subscribed to the channel just yet, please do so. I would really appreciate it. And if you have subscribed already, thank you for doing so. The intent is to do a control gaming stream this afternoon and maybe this evening. Hopefully, I really do hope that nothing happens like what happened yesterday in the Twin Cities. That was just so unnecessary, to say the very least. That doesn't even do it justice. If you are out there and exercising your rights as a U.S. citizen, please do so safely, but do them. You have that right to do that. Please do that. Stay safe. And with that, I'm going to end the stream. Thank you all for watching. Take care, and I hope to see you in the future.